With our increasing awareness of sexual trauma and just understanding the brokenness that's in every church congregation, I think some teachers are really nervous about stepping into these issues. And so you may be wondering, how do I teach on sexuality with a sensitivity to the men and women who may have experienced sexual trauma? And that's such a great question. Well, the first thing is, with everything, you want to cover that in prayer. The scripture tells us that God is close to the brokenhearted, and he can give you a spirit of sensitivity and just seasoning your words in a way that's going to land in a healing manner. But a few other specific things that I would encourage you to do is have somebody look over your notes. Have somebody who has walked through sexual trauma and may be very sensitive to that, or maybe even a therapist, look over what you plan to share, and they can give you input. When I'm talking on these issues, I often like to have one or two specific people in mind that I know well. And when I see their faces, when I think of them, I think of, wow, how would they hear this? Would this be helpful, or would it make them stumble? Another thing many of us are learning to do is give what I think we might call a trigger warning. So if somebody shows up for a Sunday service or for a conference and they're not aware of the fact that you're going to be talking about rape or abortion or some of those triggering topics, you may want to warn them ahead of time. You may want to let them know that you're going to be talking about some sensitive issues so that they can prepare or even choose not to listen to that particular message if it's going to be particularly sensitive to them. Another thing I would encourage you to do is avoid sharing details. This is of your own story or a detail of someone else's story. Details are rarely helpful. Even when we look at the biblical accounts of something like Amnon and Tamar, where Amnon raped his sister, we read that account and it's so powerful in what it's describing, but it doesn't give specific details that would be triggering. And so you want to be that same way of avoiding that kind of detail. And I also would encourage you, if it's a particularly sensitive topic, write out what you're going to say. Now, you might be extemporaneous when you speak. I like to be extemporaneous as well, but there are certain situations with what we cover being so important and so sensitive that we actually want to write out word for word exactly what we're going to say in that particular place. And then finally, I would encourage you to always offer avenues for support and prayer and counseling. And so whenever you're talking about some of these sensitive issues, don't just leave it there. Offer opportunities and resources for people to follow up if God has been stirring something that needs to be processed or confessed or talked through.